miracles today, and this is a very special day. Act 1, Scene 1 of the unfolding drama that became the United States of America. Because on this date, April the 29th, 1607, intrepid English settlers landed on the shores of what we call Virginia Beach. It was then they called Cape Henry, and they established the first permanent English settlement here in America.
And as those settlers walked across that beach for the very first time, they did something significant and changed not only the fate of our country, but the world as well. And we'll tell you more about it later on our program.
But first in the news, deadly flash floods and dangerous winds hit from Texas to Tennessee this weekend. And while the Midwest is still suffering from the last round of flooding, Ephraim Graham has this story.
Flash flooding is the #1 storm-related killer in America, killing more people than tornadoes or lightning. And authorities across the South were out en masse this weekend, looking to prevent casualties as heavy rain turned roads from Houston to Tennessee into rivers.
I thought we was just going to be able to go through it and then, proceed on. But then when we got to here, up under here, I started seeing the water getting high and it didn't go down.
A half foot of rain in only 2 hours caused massive flooding in Houston. Firefighters making 150 rescues during that short time. And it wasn't just rain causing Houston residents to seek cover.
All of a sudden, hail started hitting the car really hard, started pouring, couldn't see anything, we were driving real slow.
Golf ball-sized hail can be seen in this video, covering cars and floating by in the floodwaters. The storm system also worked its way across Tennessee. Some residents chose to evacuate as they saw floodwaters rising higher. Others were forced to as authorities patrolled flood-prone areas.
Our teams are out now assessing roadways, ditches, creek areas, and making contact with residents at their home.
Flood-weary residents of the Midwest are bracing for more as rivers continue to rise from weeks of heavy rain and melting snow.
Yeah, it's weird. We survived the 2011 flood. It doesn't get to us. But then now, because it's backed up with the ice, Here we are stuck.
Forecasters are keeping an eye on the Red River in Fargo, North Dakota. It's expected to reach its peak soon, as high as 37 or 38 feet. That's 19 feet above the riverbanks. That would be the 7th highest flood on record for the area. For farmers in the Midwest, the massive amounts of rain and flooding are both a blessing and a curse. It's a welcome change after last year's record drought, but the high waters now are preventing them from heading out to plant their crops. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Thanks, Africa. On tomorrow's program, we're going to have a look at global warming and global cooling. I think you'll find it very interesting. PBS just showed a Ken Burns feature on the Dust Bowl, how dry it was back in the 30s and the suffering those people went through as they had mounds and mounds of dust that piled up. I don't think, Terry, they've got that problem now.
No, but you wonder, when they had drought last year, does one deluge like this solve that? I mean, it doesn't seem like the earth could absorb that.
It just washes through. They need a gentle rain that'll get into the soil and bring the crops up. Actually, they can't get out in the fields. It's so muddy. You've got to get heavy equipment out there, and you can't do that. So it's a mixed blessing, but nevertheless, nobody's going to complain about having some extra water. They need it, and the reservoirs need it, and so, hey, no Dust Bowl this year. Well, federal investigators are learning more about what may have led to those tragic bombings in Boston. Lee Webb has that story from the CBN newsroom. Here's Lee.
Pat, some lawmakers believe the bombing suspects may have received training to help them carry out their attack. The FBI says Russian authorities intercepted a phone call between the older brother and his mother 2 years ago. They talked about jihad.
I do think there are persons of interest. In Russia is where I think they went from, yes, I'm ready for jihad. Here's how you conduct an act of violence with including training.
The suspect's mother, Zubadat Tsarnaev, says she is not a terrorist and her sons are innocent. She and her husband, though, have put off their planned trip to the U.S. The CIA has given tens of millions of dollars in cash to Afghan President Hamid Karzai over the last decade. The New York Times reports the money has been delivered in suitcases, backpacks, even plastic shopping bags. The money is dropped off every month or so in an attempt to buy influence, but there's little evidence it's working. Instead, U.S. officials say the money has led to more corruption and strengthened Afghan warlords. And that's made it more difficult for the U.S. to leave Afghanistan. One official, Pat, says the biggest source of corruption in Afghanistan is the United States.
I wonder if the CIA would like to pay some bribes our way. I'm sure that we would be favorable to the United States if they gave us a few $1 million.
Unbelievable.
They are so stupid.
Well, when you have a plan and then the plan is obviously not working, you get a different plan.
Yeah.
At least you stop
throwing money out of helicopters in big bags, and that's going to win warlords. I mean, no way. I mean, you just say, please, what's happening? And the same thing with the FBI. I'm a fan of the FBI, but I tell you, they blew it on this intelligence with the Sarnoff brothers. They had it, they knew it, and they blew it. But we have this incredible apparatus called Homeland Security. It is unbelievably and unbelievably inefficient. Reports were that they're now spending as much money as we were spending, I think, in World War II on so-called homeland defense. And they've bought more rounds than the United States Armed Forces are getting in terms of bullets. I mean, it's crazy what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, your government at work. Here's Lee.
One of the architects of the Senate's failed gun control bill is bringing it back. West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin says the first bill was confusing. He says his new plan is simple. It will focus on criminal and mental health background checks. But a Gallup poll indicates the gun control is low on the public's list of priorities. The economy is number 1 at 25%. Unemployment and jobs number 2 at 18%. Gun control is tied for 7th with just 4%. Senior Army officials say they do not need any more tanks, but members of both parties in Congress are pushing to spend an extra $436 million to buy more of them. One general says the Army would rather spend the money in other ways, but the M1 Abrams tank is important to some leading politicians, especially in the state of Ohio. As it turns out, that's where the tanks are made. Those lawmakers claim they support the tank for national security reasons. Others claim it's another example of pork barrel spending and why it will be difficult to cut spending projects out of the budget. Well, the 99th annual White House Correspondents' Dinner attracted Washington's power players and big-name entertainers. CBN News was there with a star-studded table of its own. Duck Dynasty stars Willie and Corey Robertson were there with us. Former Green Bay Packers receiver and Dancing with the Stars champion Donald Driver, now retired from football. And Food Network stars Pat and Gina Neely. Comedian Conan O'Brien served as the night's entertainment. And President Obama poked some fun at himself.
Everybody loves Michelle. She's on the cover of Vogue. High poll numbers, but don't worry, I recently got my own magazine cover. Now, I get it. These days I look in the mirror and I have to admit, I'm not the strapping young Muslim socialist that I used to be.
But his golf game's pretty good, I'm told. On tomorrow's 700 Club, we'll have our exclusive interview, Pat, with Duck Dynasty's Willie and Corey Robertson. We'll look forward to that. I understand you've been watching that program a time or two.
Well, my son is a duck shooter, and my father was a sportsman of some national repute. And so I think Duck Dynasty, Lee, beat American Idol in the ratings. Can you believe that? Duck Dynasty.
All the boys at my house watch.
They do watch?
They do watch. Mm-hmm.
And Corey Robertson, I don't know if he's a cousin or what, but my son Tim is an avid duck shooter, and I mean, he was just entranced by being up there with the Duck Dynasty people.
It's a great family.
Beating American Idol in the ratings.
I believe that.
You do believe it?
I do believe that.
Dear me.
Egyptian police fought with angry Muslims outside a Coptic church south of Cairo. The stone-throwing mob surrounded the church to protest a romance between a Christian man and a Muslim woman. The woman is said to have converted to Christianity before running away to Turkey with the man. The incident, though, has led to attacks on Christian churches and businesses, forcing some shopkeepers to close their doors. A new CBN website for Russian speakers is bringing thousands to Jesus Christ. The site is part of CBN's strategy to reach today's generation of Russian speakers with the gospel. It's called poisboga.com. It launched in 2008, and so far more than 1 million people have visited the site. 158,000 people have professed faith in Christ for the first time. CBN staff members follow up with new Christians and help them enroll in discipleship courses. The website is in partnership with Jesus.net, a global network of Christian ministries engaged in evangelism on the internet. You can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.